Welcome to How to Be a Person, a podcast about life with me, your host, Giuliano Grimaudo. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today. How you doing?
Oh, Giuliano, I'm so happy to be here. I absolutely love the show. I love the format, and I'm just thrilled to be here as I am and chat with you today.
Well, yeah, I really appreciate that. And, for anyone listening, Rachel and I were chatting a little bit more than I normally do beforehand. And she was just kind of telling me that she had been listening to some of the episodes. And I do really appreciate that. And, it's funny because I like this show, just like I was telling you beforehand, like I don't prepare anything. I don't just in case someone's listening for the first time, I hardly talk to people beforehand. Like genuinely, Rachel, like how we just talked was probably like 3 times as long as I normally talk to someone. I literally am just like, hey, what's up? This is how you pronounce my name. Because most people mispronounce it. Let's go. And that's for anyone just listening for the first time. So they know it's like these conversations really are just like off the cuff. I don't have any questions prepared. I really don't know like almost anything about the guests that I have on ahead of time. And part of the reason is because I'm trying to replicate the experience that I had while I was driving Uber and Lyft for like over a decade, where someone would just get in my car. I don't know anything about them, right? I just know their name. And then I would have these awesome conversations. And so that's the whole reason why we're doing this is like, hey, maybe we can replicate that same kind of experience here. And so all of that to say, Rachel, I don't know anything about you. So tell me a little bit about yourself, and for people listening, let's just go from there. Tell me a little about yourself.
Well, know this about me, that I absolutely love that format, and I have had some of the best conversations with taxi drivers during my lifetime. And
Yeah.
I think so interesting to be able to be a fly on the wall. Perhaps a little bit in a similar vein, I grew up working in my mum's hair and beauty salon, and so a bit perhaps like you in the Uber is.
Oh, for sure.
I got this window on people's lives, and it's fascinating to get to hear and learn about what other people are doing. So
Well, yeah, it's kind of the same. It's funny you say that. It's almost like the male female version of right, because people tend to, for some reason, like open up to when they're like in a taxi or an Uber, and same thing with women. They tend to open up when they're in the hairstylist chair.
Yeah, like you're not just a hairdresser, right? You're the therapist, and you're
Yep.
you're the counselor, and you're listening
Yep.
to everything that's going on in people's lives. Funnily enough, actually, my mum and I were with about 5 or 7 people who were originally there when she opened the salon 40 years ago. We went out with them last weekend.
Wow.
And one of them was making me laugh because she now runs the salon. She took it over from my mum. She's run it for longer than my mum did, and she was making me laugh because she was saying, right. So she's like, I've got to the point where I love my clients, but if they want to talk to me about anything that isn't from the neck upwards, I'm not interested. I don't want to hear about your prostate. I don't want to hear about your hysterectomy. I don't want to hear about.
Oh gosh.
She's like,
so funny.
And she's basically done a cull of her clients because she's like, you want to talk to me about any of that? I'm not doing your hair.
So funny.
I've done it long enough.
So funny. Yeah, that's really, I mean, I could see that too. I could see that. Yeah. I don't know. It is funny to think that like when someone does someone's hair, I wonder what it is about that experience, both of those experiences, like what it is about it. Because some people might say, well, hey, in an Uber, they're like, oh, I'm probably never going to see this person again. So they feel like they can get stuff off their chest.
Yeah.
That's not the case with the hairstylist.
No.
Right. But it is a very similar experience where people feel like they could just tell you what's going on in their life. And yeah, I wonder what it is that, I think I know what it is actually. It just dawned on me. Okay. No, because I heard this a while back that I think it was something about like with parents with their kids that they were saying like, hey, if you're going to have a conversation, like a serious conversation with your kid, like have it in the car with them, like sitting next to you.
Yeah.
And they said the reason is because first of all, like if you're sitting facing someone else like directly, that it almost feels like it's me versus you, as opposed to you're facing the same direction. So it's kind of like, you're on the same team or something like that. Mm-hmm. So that would explain the Uber thing. But I was thinking too, it kind of explains the the hairstylist thing too, right? Like when you're cutting, you're always like from behind. You're standing behind them, so you're
Wow.
kind of like both facing the same way. It's like I wonder if that's what it is.
I love that. I think there's something in that. I really do. I
Yeah, it might
really
be.
do. Oh my goodness. And it's so interesting because I mean, you asked me to introduce myself, and I suppose I pause for a moment, and I, just when someone asks you a question like that, like, do you ever notice like where we typically go, and even just how we end up defining ourselves as human beings?
Hmm.
I mean, I know for so long for me, there was a bit of a stock answer to that, and I would have defined myself by the roles that I've had, particularly in my career and work life, but also as
Mm.
a wife and as a mum. Um, yeah, and I just felt that this conversation maybe would deserve something perhaps a little deeper than that. Not that I have anything
Sure.
really profound to say.
No, no, no. I love that. I love you just said that because I think I just heard something recently about this
Mm,
where oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so it was it was this reel on Instagram where this guy was holding up like a rock
yeah.
and he was saying like what is this? And the guy was like it's a rock. And he's like okay, but what is a rock? Like what does that mean? Because this, other thing is also a rock, but it looks completely different. And he basically was just going down to like all the different levels, like okay, what's a rock made of? And he's like I know granite. He's like what's granite made out of? And you keep going down and it's all just like atoms, right? And then like neutrons and whatever. And I thought it was kind of interesting because what they were saying was that essentially like we put labels on things so that we can like understand them, but ultimately everything is just made up of the same thing.
Mm,
And so it's just like we have this idea of like who we are, but like our name is just a label that we've put on ourselves, and our name doesn't even fully represent who we are.
yeah.
Things that we do don't fully represent who we are. Like it's almost impossible if someone says, "Hey, tell me about yourself. Who are you?" Right? Like you don't how could someone really know? Like you just have to spend time with the person. That's all. It's the only way you can really get to know a person, because all you can do is just list off these things, but ultimately like there's so much more beneath all of those things, you know?
Oh, and what I love about what you've just said there as well is this: when we break it down, actually, we are essentially so similar, and
Hmm.
made up of the same, the same stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I am forever evolving and learning and growing, and and I guess one of the things that I've come to realize more and more in my middle age, as I am now, is just that it's that interconnection, as you talked about.
Mm.
It's there, and we are all connected, and we are all you know yeah, made of the same stuff.
It really is true. Yeah. I was just talking to my wife the other day when we were on a walk, and like there's this idea that all of us have that like we're separate from each other and that we're separate from all of the things around us. And part of that is because like we visually like there's space, right? Like if I'm like even just to me and my camera here, right? Like I can see my camera, but I know I can visually see, like also there's nothing in between it, right? Like if for me looking at my camera, it's me here, my eyes are here, and there's nothing until my camera.
Yeah,
But there it's not nothing. That's the thing about it, right? Is that like the air isn't visible, but there is air there, right? There is something there.
yeah,
And that is true with everything, right? All of the I like things that we think we're separate from, we are not separate from. There is something in between. And so all that means, like what I'm getting at is that like we have this idea that we're all separate, but we're ultimately just like all in this like soup. like
yeah,
like like when you eat soup, you're not like okay, now I'm eating carrot, now I'm eating broth, now I'm eating tortellini, right? Whatever it is that's in there, you're not eating those things separately, right? Like I'm just eating soup. And like that's kind of what we are, right? Like our world is just soup. And like we're like I'm separate, right? It's like it's kind of a funny thing to think about. You imagine the carrot being like I'm carrot, that's tortellini, okay? Like don't get us mixed up. You're like, bro, you're just all soup. Like you're all ingredients in this soup.
So I watched a really interesting video a couple of weeks ago now, and it just kept it started with a couple laying on a picnic mat, and then it
Okay.
zoomed out like 10 meters, and then it multiplied and it zoomed out again and again and again and again and again until it was like in the Milky Way. And
Mm.
and as you were talking then about the soup, I'm like, yeah, that's the soup that we're all part of, right?
Mm.
That infinite vast amount of space. Yeah, and
Well, yeah. Sorry. No, I love what you just said because it made me think of this too. Like when you like what you determine as being separate is also like based on the scale,
yeah,
right? So like when you're looking at um like something small, right? I'm trying to find something small on my desk that I can look at. Okay, maybe like a key, right? Like a key on my keyboard.
yes,
If I'm looking at it, I just say that's a key on the keyboard.
yeah,
But like if you go and you zoom in and you go far enough, then you can like see the different parts of that thing. And like if you lived within that key, right, you would view all of those things as separate. But because I'm so like separated from it, I go, oh, that's just a little thing. So that's what it made me think of when you were talking about Earth,
yeah,
right? Like we view ourselves as separate, but like you zoom out far enough and you just go, that's Earth. Like that's Earth.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like anybody who views themselves as something separate from that is silly at this scale because you look at it, you're like, you're not anything. Like you're just a part of Earth.
yeah,
And yeah, no, it's just interesting to think about like, oh yeah, because you just keep zooming out. The further out you zoom, eventually you get to the Milky Way. You can't even see Earth,
no, no,
right? So like we have this whole idea that we're something separate, but it's only based on scale. Like we're only separated at this scale
yeah.
because you can zoom out far enough and we're all just humanity on Earth.
The other thing that you said to me, which I've been delighted about really since COVID, when we started to use Zoom and this kind of technology so much more, is I know lots of people have gripes about Zoom, Teams, this kind of video conferencing
Sure.
software. But actually, I really believe that there's you can pick up on somebody's energy. Like I've been
Mm,
listening to your podcasts, and I've got this sense. I mean, it's yes, it's not a deep sense of who you are. But I've got a sense of you. I was really excited to meet you today,
sure.
and this. I think we can forget sometimes that our energy can be felt
Mm,
through, like I'm just looking at the space, like you said, the space between here and the camera. We like
mm.
we do we can pick up on these things, and I think how we protect and nurture and restore our own energy so that we can show up and have a positive impact on the people that we're having interactions with throughout the day. I think it's a really important thing for us to be conscious and aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love what you said about like your energy because I know I feel like if I know anything, I remember something about your bio said something about burnout, right? And like that's like one of the topics you talk about. But I just love because you mentioned energy. I was just reading. I have this. I have this document. It's like a running document that I call. It's just called like my purpose document, and it started because I was doing this like exercise from Tony Robbins to like write out your purpose. Okay. And so that was why I called it that. But then it just started being this running document of like, whenever I had like a thought or something that I felt like was meaningful, I would put it in there. Or if I did like some like random exercise where I listed out some things or whatever, I would just put it in there. And so now it's just this really long running document of all these things that like, kind of like my philosophy on life and what's important to me and all of those things. And ironically, again, Tony Robbins, one of the things that he says is, and I just read this morning, that's why it's at the top of my mind, was um, the single most important element of success is energy. So it's the energy that you bring to whatever you're doing is like the single most important factor that determines whether or not you will be successful at that thing. And so what you just mentioned about like, you know, being aware of what affects our energy in what ways and actively managing that is like super important.
Yeah, so important. And I work with leaders offered in senior positions in the corporate world, and many of them, and it was a trap that I fell into as well, many years ago, don't recognize. how they're feeling and where those energy levels are and what's contributing to that. And it's very easy. And even if you're not in a senior leadership role, even just, I think, with life and other things that, the things that place demands on us, it's very, very easy to just think, well, I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to press on. Either I'm just, I'm dealing with the kids here, or that aging parent there, or the work demands here. And if I just push on, if I just get through to the next weekend, or to my holiday that's coming up in a few months, or just to the Christmas break, or whatever it is, through this next project, and we keep pushing and we keep pushing and pushing. And a big learning for me has been that restoration of my energy is not the reward for the work. It's a key input to being able to perform and show up at my best and bring that energy that we're talking about. And so those strategies, those rituals, those practices, those habits, be they, daily, weekly, seasonally, annually, that we have to be able to restore that energy is so important. So important. I just, these things, right? Oh my gosh. I need to turn those notifications off. For anyone that can see that or can't see it, I tidied up my phone at the weekend because I was just, honestly, I've just been reviewing this because it's my relationship with this little piece of technology. Now, I thought I had some pretty okay habits. I didn't think I was this. I always leave it in my office when I go down for dinner with the family. And if I'm out with friends or anything like that, it stays in my handbag. And I'm not one of those that goes, oh, I've got to check my phone during dinner with friends or anything like that. I have all my notifications switched off. I deleted my social media apps like 6 months ago.
Wow.
All that kind of stuff. So I thought I was pretty good.
Okay.
And I took another look at the weekend. And I realized actually I'm not as good as I thought I was with this. And so I've been, just revisiting some of my, relationship, because those things, oh my God, they have an incredible impact on our energy and our focus and our time.
Oh my gosh. I feel like, okay, I feel like people have talked about this so much, but like, it's just, I feel like you cannot say it enough that like it seriously has such a huge impact on your energy. Like there's times where, and I feel like the same way, like I'm not the type of person who like will like leave it in another room and stuff like that, but I keep my phone like on a certain level of do not disturb at all times, like at all times. And I did that. Oh my gosh, it has to be over a decade ago now.
Yes.
That like I just decided, I was like, oh yeah, why do I even have notifications turned on? It's actually funny when I'm with people and their phone goes off, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot my phone does that, because I don't do it. Like my phone doesn't ring, and if it does ring, it's on silent, so it'll like vibrate, but that's the most.
Yes.
And I don't, other notifications don't come in.
Yeah.
And I made that decision a long time ago, but even still for me, like even despite all of that, it's still a huge distraction. And like when you open it up, it is so easy to just get like sucked in, and you think, oh, I'm just checking it. Sometimes you go in for a specific purpose and you see a notification, and then it's like 20 minutes have gone by and I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I open my phone again? Like I went to go do something on purpose, and now it's 20 minutes later. I was in this trance, and like now I'm here.
Oh.
It reminds me of his Jim Gaffigan, the comedian, when he talks about eating McDonald's fries. He's like, you start eating them, and then all of a sudden you just like, you're at the bottom, and you're like, what happened? And that's how it is when you open your phone. It's like 20 minutes go by, and you're like, what happened? Wait, what? I didn't realize 40 minutes went by.
Oh, it's so true. So one of the things that I was challenging myself with, and I'm literally just right in this space right now, is deleting all apps that are on that. So working off my, so WhatsApp, I use a lot for work and for kids and things like that, but actually intentionally doing that on my desktop, not on my phone. And actually, I found that really quite hard. I actually had to have a few days where I was running both on the phone and on
Mm,
the desktop. And then I was able to reassure myself, okay, I can do this from the desktop and then I can take it off my phone. But it
mm,
was just an interesting exercise for me to see how I was still like pulled. I went for a walk on Sunday and I was like, shall I take my phone? I was on my own. I was like, I'll take my phone just in case I might be,
yeah.
I'll take my phone.
Yeah.
And the other thing that then I even noticed, I wanted to get the phone out of my pocket. I don't know if anyone else does this. Whereas you're sort of walking and you're out in nature, you're doing something that's good and restorative for you, but at the same time you have this bit of slight feeling of guilt, like actually I could just be walking and replying to something. I could be being a little bit more productive here while I'm doing
Mm,
getting something. And 2 or 3 times I felt the urge to reach inside my pocket and pull the phone out, and I was like, "Ooh, no, gonna leave it, and just
yeah.
see what else I notice from being
Yeah.
here and present and in the moment." So I just think it's very interesting. It's interesting
Yeah.
the pull that the
Well,
headphone has.
and I think too, like we get into like a habit of just pulling out our phone. Like
Mm.
it's almost like if you like when you stop thinking about something, it's like that's become the thing that like fills the space. I was I was just laughing recently thinking about like what did I do when I was a kid and didn't have a phone? You know what I mean? Like you just would sit. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? You just look around. And I'm like, we don't do that anymore, right? It's like we any empty space, we tend to like pull our phone out. It's funny you were talking about when you're on doing that on a walk. I've noticed myself doing that, but what's funny is I put my phone in this pocket in my shorts
Yeah.
that has a zipper,
Great.
and like the zipper is enough for me to go, wait, what am I doing? Because normally you just reach in your pocket, you like there's no hesitation, it just slides in, you grab it and pull it out. But like having the zipper there makes me go, oh wait, I don't need to check my phone right now. What am I doing? But it literally is almost just like I mean, I joke about it being like you're in a trance, but I mean, I guess it's basically just a habit, right? It's
Well, it
just like a
is.
habit of pulling your phone out.
Dopamine hit as well, and we're seeing all
Mm,
these colorful apps and like the little notification things, and so it's appealing to us. And I think you're right, that tiny little bit of resistance, which is why I've put only the apps that I most need from a productivity perspective on my front screen. Everything else is like 3 or 4 screens, home pages, like later
yeah, I
on.
saw that. I saw that when you held it up. I was like, that's a good idea. That's
I
a
was like,
really
they're
good
all
idea.
kind of any of those that still exist on the phone are kind of like right at the back. And
Yeah.
there was I haven't tried this yet, but I have looked at it. There's an app called Dumb Phone, which
Mm.
that literally just turns your phone. I mean, this will horrify some people, I'm sure, but will turn your phone back into kind of like the 2007 version, if you like, where it's not even app colorful, kind of app icons. It's just words, so you want to
Mm.
just the word contacts, and so it just changes and just reduces all of that stimulation and the dopamine hit that we're getting from every
Mm.
time that we're picking up our phone and checking and looking at these things. So yeah, anyway, I don't know how we ended up getting onto phones, but
I might have to try that though. It's so hard because you know how sometimes you hear something and you're like, "Oh, I don't want to do that," but like it's almost because you should do it. That's why you feel so much like when you said that, I was like, "Oh, I really don't want to do that, but I feel like I should."
well, that's where I've been with this one thing over like the last 4 or 5 days. I've absolutely
Yeah.
been in that space where I was like, oh god, I thought I was okay with this. No, I'm not, and actually I'm feeling that resistance to do it, but I
Mm.
know it's the right thing to do. And even if I
Yeah.
just say, look, I'm going to experiment with this, I'm a huge believer in being scientists of ourselves and just like giving things a go and seeing what works and what doesn't. And my coach is always saying to me, Rachel, resistance is the path. It's showing you the way to
Mm.
go.
Interesting. Yeah, so it's so funny you just said that. I don't know if I've said this on the episodes before, but I literally have said that exact phrase, like to be a scientist of yourself. It's so funny because when I was a kid, I wanted to be a scientist. Like I remember like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I put scientist. And now I kind of laugh because I'm like, oh, that's kind of funny because I'm not an actual scientist, but that is how I feel about life. Like I feel like we all take it like way too seriously, like this like it has to be this way, or if I don't do this then this is going to happen and whatever. And ask anybody who's known me for, more than like 5 years, and they will tell you that like I have just tried so many different things when it comes to work, when it comes to diet and exercise. Like I just am constantly experimenting. And so I just think it's so funny. You just say, I've never heard anybody else say it the way that I said it, where like a scientist of life or a scientist of yourself or whatever.
Yeah, and I can remember, so this probably 15 years ago now, just purely out of my own curiosity and wanting to learn for myself, I studied health coaching, and one of the concepts that they talked about within our teachings, and what we were learning, was around bio-individuality. What's right for one person is not necessarily right for another, and
Okay.
where you are in your life and I am in my life, and our circumstances, gosh, you being out in Arizona, your environment,
Mm-hmm.
it's very different to me here in England. And
Yeah.
so there is, I think, that need for us to be able to play and experiment and work out what fits, and remembering bio individuality. We are all different,
Mm.
and working out what serves us and what doesn't.
Yeah. It's so funny because there's so many. So I feel like, because I totally agree with you. I think that we all are so unique and need to find what it is about ourselves that makes us unique, and like really, really lean hard into those things. Like I really do think that that is actually, like, if I had to narrow down like what is the point of everything, it's that, is like figure out what your thing is and lean into it. And that's not just like a one-time thing, right? That's like a path. Like you're just constantly on it your whole life. You're constantly learning more about yourself and discovering more of what you're good at and all of those things. And also, even just the idea of leaning into those things is in itself a path, because you're afraid to, right? Like you're afraid to lean into like those things that make you you, and the things that you're naturally good at. And sometimes you don't even realize what you're naturally good at because you're so naturally good at it that you don't even recognize it. It's just so normal to you, right? And then when you realize it, you're like, well, how can I do that? And how do I make a living doing that? And right, there's like all of these things in the way. So it is in itself like a big journey. But I do really think that like that is the whole point of all of this, is like figuring out what makes you unique, embracing what makes you unique, and then like fully leaning into that same thing that makes you unique. That being said, what's also really funny is that if you're a special snowflake syndrome,
Have I heard of special snow? I don't know if I've heard it described like that, but go on,
no,
please.
so it's different. This is different. That's what I'm saying, is that it's like, if anything, it's the opposite. So like this whole special snowflake syndrome is kind of like, you think you're so unique, when in reality, like we're all human beings and we all have very similar experiences. And like, stop thinking that you're special or like above this or anything like that. And that's what's kind of funny, because I really do feel what I just described, where it's like we have to figure out what makes us unique and what our strengths are and lean into those things. But then also I feel like there are certain things in life where it's like, if you believe, well, but my situation is different, that's not going to work for me because my situation is different. It's like, then it can also be like a hindrance. And I guess I don't really have a conclusion. I just am thinking, oh, that is interesting. There are some situations where it makes sense to embrace it, and some situations where you'll have to realize, no, like you're just a person just like everyone else. And if it worked for that person, it can work for you, you know?
Yeah, and I think, oh gosh, to speak to this, because I feel as though there's something here bubbling, and just deeply reflective in what you've brought up here. I think is so important. Um, for those people who are out there who don't know what their purpose or their unique thing is, I
Hmm.
think I also want to say to them that actually that's also okay, because it doesn't necessarily have to be something big and grand. Just knowing that being who you are, and just how you show up day to day, whether that be for your friends, family, your loved ones, your organization, your community, like, just that you are enough is what I want
Hmm.
to say,
Hmm.
in that. And was it the special snowflake, because I described it, the special snowflake syndrome as well, that potentially has a touch for me of, um a lack of focus in terms of what we can control for ourselves.
Mm,
So even within any given situation, and recognizing
sure.
that some situations are horrific, particularly for, kind of, parts of the world right now, very, very, very challenging. And certainly, and for individuals all over, um, we always do have that choice, as Viktor Frankl, and Man Search for Meaning.
Mm,
We always have that choice of what we decide something means, and that can be incredibly hard at times. Um, but that belief, as Tony Robbins will always say, that life is happening for me, not to me, and
mm,
retaining our focus on what we can control. Um,
mm.
Even when it seems very, very, very little, we can always control what we decide any given situation means. And I think that can help us be more resourceful and improve our energy in those moments. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, so something you said earlier, I feel like ties into this when you said that like we're like you're like I'm constantly learning and evolving and growing, and like I totally agree with that. I think that for me is okay, so before when I mentioned like hey, like embracing who you are and like what makes you unique and leaning into your strengths, that has to come from a place of like full acceptance of who you are right now. So just like how you were saying, it's like it can't come from a place of like I'm not enough, because that's not coming from a place of growth, right? That's coming from a place of like I'm trying to like compensate for the fact that I'm not good enough. No, you have to actually believe that you are 100% good enough right now as you are, and then you can grow. That's the part that's so funny about it. It's like when you're trying to like fix yourself, that's when you're like, okay, now you're not operating from the right place. But when you're coming from a place of, oh, I love myself exactly who I am, and I'm 100% like 100% acceptable as who I am as a person right now,
Yeah.
that is like the healthiest place that you can actually learn and grow from and do the thing that we were just talking about embracing your strengths and leaning into those things. It's like it has to come from a place of actually fully accepting yourself as you are now.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think in terms of some of my experience, that absolutely resonates with me, and at the same time, simultaneously, um, as being really grateful for where I am, for for who I am, for all of that right now. I think simultaneously there can also be this kind of friction almost with but I'm not quite where I want to be, or and so I think that's an interesting relationship, and
Mm-hmm.
one that I think helps to kind of pull you towards that further, that on that journey, and to
Mm-hmm.
further learn and grow and evolve and develop. Because it's funny how I think we can simultaneously sit in this space of absolute gratitude for all that we have and all that we are right now, and at the same time feel a little bit unsatisfied and that
Mm-hmm.
we're not quite
Mm-hmm.
where we want to be. But I don't know, maybe
Yes.
that's just part of the human condition, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so what's interesting, so when you were saying that, what was going through my head was it's where I want to be, not who I am, if that makes
Wow,
sense.
yes.
Right? It's like, so I can fully love and accept myself for who I am right now. I'm just not where I want to be yet as that person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, really, really interesting distinction. And I wonder how much of the where we want to be involves that evolution of who we are, that identity
Yeah.
level change, actually,
Yeah, for
as
sure.
well.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. No, I get it. I get it. See that.
Another one of my coaches, because I have more than one. I wouldn't be a coach if I didn't believe in the process, right? So
Sure.
another one of my coaches, my business coach, um, he talks about one of the biggest life-changing conversations that he ever had. And he was in a really, really bad place, and he sat down with this one particular person one day, and they asked him a question, and it just resonated in a completely different way with him and made him change his whole perspective on everything. And she asked him, she said, "David, who are you becoming?" And that was that question at that identity level. And he will say to me now, Rachel, never stop becoming, kind of that next evolution, like of who you are.
Yeah.
And like I say, at the same time, I think we have to have, and part of that journey is having that love and appreciation for where we are, and recognizing that none of this is, I was just something, I was going to say, I am just another human being figuring this stuff out in life, the ebbs, the flows, the challenges, the magic, the joy, and making sense of it all, and just doing my best to show up as a kind and compassionate human being along kind of along the way.
Mm.
And that means being kind and compassionate to myself as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this is like the analogy that pops in my head when we talk about like striving for more. And like who are you becoming, like always learning, like what you said before is something I say all the time about, like, oh yeah, I'm constantly learning and growing and evolving. Like one of the things I say is that, like, I don't want to be the same person today that I was even yesterday.
Yeah.
Like that's how much I love to learn and to grow and to change and evolve. Okay.
Yes.
So what I was thinking of was so like when so let's say you're trying to start a business. Okay. Let's say you're starting a business and you're trying to get your first clients. Okay. And let's say it's two people doing the exact same thing. Okay. Person A is coming from a place of, I don't, like, my bank account has $10 in it.
Yep.
Okay. And then the other person is, I have $20 million in the bank. I'm just doing this for fun. And you think about the different energy those people are going to bring to that scenario. To me, that is the difference between what we were just describing. Like when it comes to, like, how you were saying, like, how can we make the comparison of like fully accepting where we are right now, but like wanting to do more? It's kind of like when you fully accept yourself, you're coming from this place of like, oh, I've got 20 million bucks in the bank. Like, I'm good. Right.
You vibrate at different, the very,
Yes.
very quick story, which
Sure.
might help really kind of cement exactly what you're saying.
Sure.
During COVID, I lost about 95% of my business, and it took me a good 12 to 18 months to build that business back up again.
Wow.
And during that time, it was really hard. I can remember the months where my husband would say to me, so, okay, Rachel, what have you earned this month? And I'd be like, £75, or a really small amount of
Yeah.
like, back to your $10 in the bank, like I was that person. Or sometimes I was even investing and in the business, and so it'd be like a negative figure. And now I was very fortunate. I had a husband who was supporting me with that, and we had some savings, which meant that I could sustain kind of doing this. But here's the thing about the energy piece: when the clients started to come in, it was when I was in an energy not of lack and not of need, but could, hold the opportunity in that client in the open palm, serve from my heart in the conversations that I was having with them, and not be attached to the outcome. And that's when those clients started to come in.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect example. That's what I mean, is that like when it comes to like growing as a person, I really think that, like, if you're coming from a place of I'm not good enough, then that's like the person who has $10 left in the bank. Right. Like it's like, that's not the place that you want to grow from. Now, great. I guess it's not a perfect example, right? Because in real life, that is sometimes just what's happening. Right. But I just mean, when we're talking about like coming from a place of, abundance, in a place of like, I'm totally okay with who I am, and I just want to grow. I just want to learn more, and I want to, evolve as a person. It's like, it's just two different, two different energies that you bring to those activities,
Back to what we were saying before about even just over, these Zoom and video calls,
Mm.
people on the telephone, people pick up on your energy. They know if you're smiling or not. That was something I learned from my reception days at the salon early on.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so
So it's
true.
that energy. It's back to that energy again, isn't it? So important. And how to keep that faith and that belief. So I know something else that Tony teaches is that success cycle. And it's like, actually, if any of us have that infinite potential, then great. But how do we make sure we're tapping into that infinite potential? Because very often, are we truly tapping into all of our potential that's there? And even I think, Giuliano, if you and I were very, very honest, like, I know that there are times when I leave some of my potential on the table and
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not
Oh
tapping
yeah, for sure. I don't have to be very
and
honest. I'll just be honest right now. Yeah, definitely.
let's do it. Yeah, absolutely. And what is it that enables us to tap into more potential? That it means that we take bigger action, more action steps that leads to, more results. The thing that starts it all off is that certainty and is that belief. And it was so hard for me at that time to retain that certainty and belief. The little voice in my head, can I really do this? Like, when might I need to give up? When might I need to think about going back to the corporate world and, getting a real job? Let's call it that,
Mm.
um, and at the time, I remember my dad saying to me, incredibly influential man on me, Rachel, look, we're working ever so hard. They were helping us with childcare at the time. He's like, when do you call it quits? Oh my gosh, that was tough. That was really tough for me to hear and to, kind of retain my belief. And the things that I did to help support me during that time was, one, I surrounded myself with incredible people. So the coaches I've already mentioned, but also great mentors. And that didn't happen overnight or unexpectedly. I intentionally set out several years ago to look for people who would be my mentors and that would help support me. And I'm so grateful for them. Those relationships have blossomed into the most beautiful friendships for me. The beyond anything I probably would have really imagined those relationships would have become initially. Feeding my mind with good stuff like, your podcasts and, and good books and looking after myself, whether that be, just getting out in nature, getting daylight and sunlight and being present with my children. And I wasn't always that great at that during that time. I'm going to be honest. But I was aware of it at least. And when things started to, dip quite significantly or swing quite badly, I would know to kind of come back to some of those basic things that help us to, retain our energy, our ability to, and our bandwidth to deal with stress, and uplift our mood.
Hmm. I keep thinking back to that moment when you said that your dad said what he said to you. I feel like that was like, oh, like I felt that when when you said that. I was like, oh damn, man, because I've always had. I feel like the people closest to me have always been really supportive. Um, Maybe that's not the right thing to say. I feel like over time I have chosen the people that I will have closest to me because of the fact that they will support me. Okay. And I'm thinking, if one of those people who was super supportive of me at some point was like, are you sure about this? I feel like, oh man, that would really, really crush me. And for you in that moment, like, what was that like? More of like do you feel like that moment was like more crushing, or was it like more like motivating? Like, did you feel like that was like a turning point for you, or was that just kind of like, oh, it hurt? And then now you can look back on it and be like, well, even though it hurt, it now I'm here.
Well, if I do the look back on it piece first, now I look back on it, I recognize that it's him speaking out of absolute love and wanting
Yeah.
what's best. That's his intention with this, and I
Yeah.
can see that now. At the time, I was really angry with him. I was really angry.
Mm.
We were in a pub having our fish and chips, proper British fish and chips. In the pub garden, and I remember pulling my husband to one side, going, "I can't believe it! Can't believe Dad's just said this to me." And my husband was absolutely brilliant, and he was, he in that moment, he kind of reconnected me with that. You're going to do this, like just ignore
Mm.
him. You're going to do this. Um, yeah, and so yeah, I was actually quite cross in the initial piece, and I'd be lying if I didn't say that it didn't at times still sit with me in those dark, quiet moments, where you're getting ready to go and do the things again, the things that I knew I was doing all the right things with my marketing, and I was being consistent. And like I said, I had coaches and mentors that were there to help spur me on and, continue, help me keep the faith and remain consistent with those things. The one thing that none of us knew was just how long it was going to take. We just knew that I was in lag time. We just didn't know how long that lag time was going to be. And so I just had to, I had to keep that faith and that trust that lag time would eventually, and I could literally, as far as I knew it, I could be right around, like it could be today, it could be in the next hour, like that lag time could be over so quickly, and that was something I think that helped me retain that faith as well.
Interesting.
Around that.
So when you say lag time, you're talking about like the concept of like leading indicators, lagging indicators, correct?
Oh, so I suppose what I mean is lag time, as in, like, I'm doing all of the right things from a marketing perspective. I'm feeding
Yeah.
the funnel in all of the right ways. It's just a matter of time that lagged, like it's just going to
Yeah.
catch up. At some
Yeah.
point, something will drop through that funnel and will become
Yeah.
in the delivery. But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
none of us know how long that time is. Is that going to be a little bit of time or a long? Like, none of us know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was 18 months, and
Mm.
yeah, and it was just keeping the faith throughout that time.
Yeah. Well, I think so. Part of the reason why I bring it up too is because like when I heard this concept, it like shifted something in my perspective as well as like the idea of leading indicators versus lagging indicators. And all that really means is like, a lagging indicator would be like money in your bank account. Okay. Like ding,
Okay.
ding, like we're successful. A leading indicator is like the marketing, right? Or like, hey, uh, you know, I'm reaching out to X amount of new prospects per day and blah, blah, blah. Right. So like you have leading indicators, which basically, end in lagging indicators. And I think it's like when I heard that, it made me realize, oh, okay. Because it's really easy to be like, oh no, like I'm not making the amount of money I want to make, or I'm not seeing, and this could be applied to anything in life, right? But like, I'm not seeing the results I want to see yet. And you're like, you have to understand that there will always be leading indicators, lagging indicators. There's actions, and then the consequences of those actions. Sometimes there's a giant gap in between
There's
those
a delay.
things.
Maybe a delay is a better way of describing
Yeah, no, but you're right. Yeah, there is, and like that's just
it.
how it works.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that might be worthy of two things actually that might be worthy of
Sure.
sharing here around this is I had really good people around me that were sense checking that the actions that I was taking. So, your leading indicators, as you would describe them, that those leading indicators were the right things to be doing.
Yeah.
I think we have to be really open to that feedback and to adjusting if necessary. But I had good people that were confirming, no, you're doing all the right things. Because when you've got that delay and you're not getting any feedback from it, and it doesn't appear to be working, you're a bit uncertain. Do I carry on? Like, is this the right thing to do, or should I change my tactic? So I think
Very true.
responsive to that feedback and and having good people around you that can help reassure you are taking the right steps would certainly be one thing to bring up here. And I can't now remember the other thing I was going to say.
That's okay, because I just had something else pop in my head. Earlier when I was saying, the whole way we got here was just when I originally was like, "Tell me about yourself," right? And it was kind of like, how do we do that? So now I'm curious, like, how do you, like, if someone, because we never really, you never answered the question. We kind of just we started talking about, oh yeah, that's a good point, and we're all separate, but we think we're separate, but we're together, right? And we just kind of went down this whole rabbit hole. Like, how do you view that, right? When you think of like introducing yourself, like, do you have a unique take on that? Like, when you introduce yourself to people, like, I'm just curious because some people do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and I suppose the deeper part of my reflection before coming onto the show and thinking about that was, genuinely, I am just another human being figuring life
Hmm.
out, and trying to make sense of it all. I believe that I call it my soul's contract is to be ever evolving, as we've talked about, that
Hmm.
learning and that growth. That's a key part of what drives me. Um, I'm aware most of the time of making choices that are aligned to my purpose, which you've talked about, and values. And sometimes I do that well and more consistently than at other times. And I certainly still have work to do. I think that's a never ending piece of work. And I really care about making a positive difference in the world, and in particular about our home, this beautiful planet Earth that we share. And it concerns me deeply in terms of where we find ourselves at the moment as a human race, and the you know the interlinking and overlapping challenges that we have, be it climate change, geopolitical stuff, rapid technology advances. There's some big, complex, interconnected stuff going on in the world today, and I suppose through my work. So my company is called Elevar, and we specialize in leadership development. And that work is really about helping leaders to reconnect with what matters,
Hmm.
with what really matters, so that they can lead better and live better and love what they do and enjoy that journey that we've been talking about along the way. Um,
Hmm.
and I believe that the leaders who will make the difference in the world are the ones who can stay grounded and human and awake to what truly matters. And it's why I do what I do.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think, um, well, it's funny because obviously a lot of people are having conversations about the things that you just described, right? Like, there's so many different things going on, and I feel like I have to strike a balance, because there's times where I will think about those things and it makes me like worried or upset or something like that. But then I've so I feel like it's so important for us to do what we can to improve ourselves and what we have influence over. And I think what's really interesting is that if everyone did that, then like everything would be fine, basically. I can't make everyone do that, but that's kind of the cool thing, is that like the more people focus on influencing for the better, their what they can influence for the better, then like it just has this ripple effect throughout, I mean, everywhere, right? Basically everywhere. And what's cool is that like as you work to influence things for the better, your what you are able to influence also increases, right? Your sphere of influence increases as you do that. So yeah, I just part of the reason why I'm sharing this too is because I know, right, obviously some people listening are thinking about those things as well. And I, you know, just like I said, like everyone has their sphere of influence. It's like, well, for me, it's the people listening to my show. Like that's part of my sphere of influence. And like, if I can help anybody with anything, it's like their perspective. And it's really easy to like look at what's going on and be worried about it and be like, what's going to happen and all these things. But ultimately, if we don't have influence over it, if it's not something we can change, I'm not saying that like you should be, blind yourself to it or pretend like it doesn't exist, but you literally, like, all you can do is worry about it, which means like you can't actually improve it
Yeah,
if all you're doing is worrying. And so my point is that like if we are able to focus on ourselves and like what we immediately have influence over, we have to have faith that like over time as we do that, that it will have a ripple effect, and the more people do that, the more positive influence we can have like on everyone, if that makes sense.
absolutely, absolutely. Uh, and coming back to, because you're right, and I've been there as well, where you think about some of these things that are going on in the world, and it's overwhelming, and some of the grief that comes with that as well. Whether it's grieving for what's happening, what's been lost. And that can be, on the, kind of, it could be environmentally, it could be even things like, you know the way things were over, kind of like, certainly over my lifetime and perhaps my parents' lifetime, where we might have taken certain institutions or things like as, well, yeah, sure, I'm going to be able to do better than my parents, and my children are going to
Mm,
do better than me. And actually we're finding that in some ways some of that is breaking down. And it's harder for, our kids to get on the property ladder, or um,
mm,
and then we're living longer, and pensions, and maybe not, kind of
mm,
where we thought that they would be. Um and so there's a how do we as human beings remain hopeful in spite of knowing all of that? And how do we metabolize that grief? And how do we come together, recognizing that some things may not be as we once thought, or as they once were. Um and sometimes I think in that, just being able to hold space for one another. I've just come from lunch with really dear friend who I've not seen for far too long. Like it's I'm not proud of myself for how long it's been since I last saw her. But she lost her mum recently. She was deeply, deeply close to, and she cared for her mum up until her death. I lived with her mum, and you know, one of the things that just struck me in our conversation today were we were just holding space for one another and being human beings. It wasn't about trying to fix anything, but it was talking about, hopes and desires, and new opportunities, but also sadness and grief for what was gone, but also honoring that and what was lost. And because it was so precious to us, that
mm.
element of, of grieving, around that. And I wonder, actually, there's so much in the world today that's like, okay, and I'm not saying that this is wrong, kind of around fixing or striving, or, kind of like, yes, absolutely. And also, there's some things that maybe we just won't be able to fix, but how do we
Mm.
support one another, and how do we show up for one another? Back to energy again, actually. How do
Yeah.
we show up for one another and allow one another to process some of that stuff that's going on? Because even in that, we can be, really, really helpful to one another. So you were saying about what can we control and what's within our sphere
Yeah.
of influence. Well, number one, it's how we're managing our own state and health, and everything else. So if we're healthy and good and all the rest of it, then we can look after our families. Then when we've looked after our families and we know that they're safe and healthy and well, then we have the capacity to be able to report for duty for our organizations, for our community, and for the wider world. And that's not a linear thing. That is going to flux and change at different times. There's going to be times when my family are going to need me, or I'm going to need myself. I had the most awful cold the last 2 weeks. I was like, literally, okay, work is going on the back burner. Like, I'm going to do what I need to do, but otherwise I'm going to rest and get myself well, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to, show up. So that's not it's not a linear thing when I describe that kind of progression of it's going to flux and change over time, and just being able to recognize where we are with that, and honor that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, someone said this a little while back where basically we're not like equipped to be able to handle the news of like the entire world. Like us being connected, like just as a species, right? Like being connected and like knowing, even just being aware of what's going on the other side of the world, how recent that is. Like we're not like biologically, we are not equipped to be able to handle all of that information. And it's tough because even though we're not equipped, like, oh, well, right. We have the information, like it's there, right? We know it now. And like, just because we're not equipped to handle it. So what I mean is that there's two sides to this, right? Where we can be like, hey, we're not equipped to handle this. We need to focus on ourselves, not worry too much about what's going on other places. But on the other side, it's like, well, yeah, but I also know, like, and now that I know it, like, I'm just supposed to pretend like it doesn't exist or that it's not happening. And I don't think either of those things are 100% true. Right. I think that like you can't worry about everything that's going on in the world, right? There's certain things that, for example, might be top of mind for people right now because it's at the top of the news. But like, we also have to understand, like, there's literally millions of other terrible things happening every single day that we're completely unaware of. And you're not concerned about those things.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
And some of them might be on our doorstep. We know
exactly. And we're oblivious to them, and we can't sit here and worry about that. And you don't, and you don't feel bad that you don't, because you're not aware of it. Right. So that's what I mean, is that there's a certain, like, so I feel like there has to be like this balance of like, yes, I'm aware of what's I can't escape it, right? Because everyone knows what's going on in every other part of the world. At the same time, I have to remember that whatever I might be concerned about, the only thing I have control over is myself, and my influence is not across the world. I cannot influence that situation. That being said, there are things that I do have influence over. And I'm saying I as in me, but I mean like anybody listening, right? But like whatever I have influence over, if I positively influence those things, it's like that's the only thing that we ultimately have control over, is our own actions and what we have a sphere of influence over, if that makes sense.
Something that I've been doing, and full credit to Jamie Wheel, who I've been working with over sort of the last 12 months or so. Jamie Wheel, if your listeners haven't heard of him before, wrote Stealing Fire and Recapture the Rapture. And one of the things, or one of the concepts that he's brought to me, is this idea of prepstering. So how can we be prepared, given the facts and what we know about what's going on in the world today, taking a kind of a sensible kind of view of what might happen given where we are, locationally, and all of the rest of it. What might be some sensible, kind of, and he would call it prepstering. So that whole idea that we can be prepped, but in a hipster kind of cool way, without losing our cool and without getting too stressed out about it. And so I've been reviewing that, and these are really simple things, but very practical. So one of the things my husband and I finished doing weekend before last we've reviewed all of our first aid kits, and we've just, because I don't know
Mm.
about anyone else, but like stuff sits there and it goes out of date and all that. Well, we've reviewed
Yeah.
them all. We've made sure we've got everything we need, that we've got, that it's consistent across the 2 cars that we own and the one that we've got in the house.
Mm.
And we, that, okay. So, now if we were in a situation where, we couldn't get first aid for any particular reason, we've
Hmm.
got, at least a basic kit to be able to help support ourselves. In other parts of the world, it might be, water, and have you got access to water and power and communication? So, Spain a few months ago, all its power and communications went down. Um,
Mm.
we know that there are natural disasters, and whether it be wildfires or floods and things like that. Are you ready to go? Have you got like your key thing? So whatever it is for your part of the world, how do you prep yourself? So, and I think that can feel enormously reassuring, because you've kind of, okay,
Mm.
I've thought about these things, and I've got these things prepped and ready to. And we can't plan for every eventuality, but perhaps with the world the way that it is today, at least if you could think, well, for somewhere between 1 to 3 weeks, if I needed to be self-sufficient for shelter and food and, water and energy and things like that, actually, I could do that. Because if I, again, coming back to this, if I can look after myself and my family, then I can report for duty with my community and, the
Mm.
wider world, and support them. Because I'm in a situation where me and my family are safe and we're fine, then I can show up and, and be the difference then in the world that I want to be.
Yeah. I think what's cool too is when we talk about like sphere of influence, like part of your sphere of influence is leaders, right?
Mm.
So it's kind of like, hey, like, right, for a lot of people, maybe leaders are not in their sphere of influence, but they have, hey, I can, you know, like in every different capacity, right? Just being kind to people, picking up garbage when you see it on the side of the road or something. Okay. So like I'm saying in every aspect of being a person. Um, but like, and so like that's like the most that some people can do because that's the most that they have influence over. And then you have some people maybe who have like a really big social media following, right? Okay. And so for them, it's kind of like, hey, I have a pretty big influence. What can I do to better the world with the influence that I have? And like for you in your situation, it's like, oh, I connect with leaders, and so like what can I do to influence those people because those people have a giant influence over others. And so see, but this is the part that it always comes back to like, okay, well, what do I have power? What do I have the power to influence for the better? And if every person is like, hey, I'm just going to do what I can to make my sphere of influence better, then ultimately it trickles down into everything else.
Absolutely. And we're, like this brings us full circle. We were saying right at the top of our conversation just how we are all interconnected, not only with each other, but
Mm,
also with the planet. And,
yeah.
and I think the way that we have evolved, and since the Industrial Revolution, and how we live, I think it's easy to forget that we are essentially animals still
Hmm.
walking around on this planet, and like you said, we're
Hmm.
not equipped for some of these things. And the
Yeah.
vast advances in technology and the speed of communication and messaging, and our evolution hasn't had chance to keep up with all of that stuff.
Exactly. Exactly.
In our timeline, and we are, we're still, I suppose, quite primal beings.
Yeah, no, it's so funny you say that. There's so many like, okay, so for example, right? Like it's almost like we moved so fast that now everyone's trying to come up with solutions to push us back. Like I think perfect example is that app you said, dumb phone. Like, okay, guys, we got way too far down this. Like, let's move back a little bit. You
Yeah,
have like the shoes that are supposed to mimic being barefoot,
yeah,
right? They're
yes, yes.
it's like we moved too fast. We thought we had a solution and we went in the wrong direction. It's like we got to move back a little bit. It's kind of funny to think of like that. But yeah, I mean, honestly, that's really what it is. It's like humans have been around for, well, who knows how long, right? But like we like all of these advances and things have happened in such a short amount of time is like we have not, like you said, evolutionarily kept up. Like we just simply couldn't. Like things have just moved too quickly. The evolution does not move that fast. And so it's like we're kind of out of alignment with like what will actually allow us to thrive.
And do you know, it blows my mind that my husband, who is 50, I don't think he minds if I tell you that. My husband, who's 50, in his lifetime, the population of human beings on the planet has doubled. When he was born, there were 4 billion of us on the planet. Today, there's 8 billion.
Wow.
And I kind of go, 50 years? Like that, like it blows my mind.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And that, you know, when you take that kind of step back and you kind of go, well, hang on a minute. If this does feel, I think so many of us, like our spidey senses are a bit like, okay, this feels a bit weird. like there's stuff that just like it feels a lot. Yeah, I think that there is a lot. That doesn't mean that I think we have to, you know, we have to panic about that. I think it comes back to what we've been talking about, managing our state, remaining in hope despite everything that is going on, and showing up even in simple ways for ourselves and our families to start with. You know, the people, you know, and even if you're not living with your family, you know, those people who are around you and you're interacting with on a daily basis, let's just show up well in that context and be present for one another, and that matters. And like you say, if we all did that, oh my goodness, what a different world we might be in. To your point about simplification, there is a great video. I don't know if you've seen it, and if any of your listeners might be interested in this. It's called The Great Simplification, and it's by Nate Higgins. And it's a short animation. It's around about half an hour long, but he talks about like where we've come from and how actually the answer maybe for us going forward as human beings is actually that we do get back to some simplification. So that just resonated with what you were saying there about, you know, kind of simplifying things.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up. Rachel, I really appreciate you coming on. I feel like we could talk for hours. But yeah, so for anybody that's listening that wants to connect with you and learn from you or whatever you might offer them, how can they do so?
Well, so the best way to get in touch with me is through my website, which is elevar, ELLEVAR.co.uk. But I do have something I'd love to offer to listeners, actually, if that's okay. So if the conversation has resonated, then I have created a very simple tool, and it's called The Pause. It's just 5 questions, and they're the kind that can cut through the noise and help you lead, whether you are a leader in an organization or actually that's just leading yourself, and to lead from that truth and not from fear. So you can download that for free at elevar.co.uk, or I'm sure we can pop the link in the notes, in the show notes as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, be more than happy to share that for anyone that's interested.
Awesome. Rachel, I appreciate you so much. This was such a great conversation. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
I just need to have a longer Uber ride next time.
All right, Rachel. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Bye for now.
Thanks for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who'd appreciate it. For everything I have to offer, visit howtobeaperson.co.